Hi there. Welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds. And today we're lucky enough to have Colin Joudrie, President and CEO of Selkirk Copper Mines. Trades on the TSX Venture Exchange with the ticker SCMI. Hey, Colin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, actually, and really pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you. I appreciate the time that you and your team are spending with us. I think we've got a good story to tell here, and folks should be interested. So, really looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I heard about you guys several months ago, and looked like you had a pretty run of the mill sort of listing, which was good, nice and quick, and as sort of designed. So well done on that. Does you do you've come into kind of a hot sort of commodities resource market. Lots of talk on copper. I think, with the name Selkirk Copper, we're gonna talk a little
Yep,
bit
we
about
should we
copper
should talk
today.
about yeah.
But before we kind of get into what the company is all about, maybe we could start with you. You've got kind of a really unique sort of background and history and experience. Maybe you could kind of, for my viewers that don't know who you are, would you mind just talking a bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the most uncomfortable things that we all get to do, talk about ourselves a little bit. But so I'm a geoscientist by training. I started my career as a geo, and I started with a company that many people will know, sort of two names, Cominco Limited, and then Tech Resources in the fullness of time. And I spent the balance of my career working in a whole variety of different aspects of the organization for actually 34 years in the end, or 33 and a half, depending on how you do the math. And it was a great career. It was a really amazing place to work. Very entrepreneurial, very aggressive at different points in time in the history of the company. And my responsibilities obviously started in exploration and geology, working in Canada. I then had stints in sort of three different regions of the world: South America, where I lived and worked for a period of time on some of the bigger copper projects that you might know about or not, but nonetheless, a lot of fun there. Spent a fair amount of time living and working out of Southern Africa in Namibia. And again, base metals, precious metals focus, and a good stint in Australia working on a whole variety of different things, some corporate assets and whatnot. And for the last part of my career, at least with Tech Resources, I was responsible for what was known as their copper resource portfolio or their development portfolio. And from about 2016 to 2024, I was the sort of lead on six of those projects, taking them through everything from design considerations, team building, bringing folks back into the story, permitting, engineering, et cetera, all with the view that the copper market was a place that we should all be positioned in going forward. And that's sort of the wrap up of that career. And then, how I sort of got to this is really a little bit more of a story about the things that we'll talk about a little bit more going forward. It's got all the elements that we want in a development story. So
Well, excellent. Well, not every day that a junior has somebody that spent quite a bit of time, with majors and with a company like Tech. So that's great. Obviously, for the plan here on what you're looking to do with the project, and obviously would speak to the quality of the project, sort of being able to get you from a career like that. So good stuff. So for investors that are kind of hearing about Selkirk for the first time, this is a first look for us and my sort of subscribers and viewers. Could you give us a bit of an elevator pitch?
yeah, sure. So, I mean, this is essentially, I view this as a value opportunity in copper. It's a story that people may know by another name. So, this was the former Minto copper, gold, silver mine. It was developed by Sherwood Copper and then Capstone and operated for a number of years quite successfully. And then it sort of fell into disrepair, maybe a little bit. Not so much that the asset was not giving, it just became a non core asset for Capstone. They stopped sort of drilling and attending to the resource replacement sort of work that these assets sort of need. And then the most recent operator, a group called Pembridge, sort of came back into the asset with some high hopes, but they effectively rushed back into a production scenario and they were unable to sort of make ends meet. And that's where the story sort of ended, and that's where our story sort of began. So what this really is an acquisition out of bankruptcy, a good asset with good bones, a lot of invested capital, and it just needs a plan to see itself through to what we're thinking is about a 12 to 15 year mine life to start. and it's a good story. I think the other part that's really unique about this out of bankruptcy rebirth story started with the Selkirk First Nation. They acquired the asset out of bankruptcy and then sought support from the broader market. And that's a really unique story. This will be the first Indigenous majority held public mining company in Canada. They have over 22.5% stake. And they really want to see this thing work well. But the main thing is let's do it well, environmentally responsible and socially responsible. So it's quite a neat story.
That I would say that sounds like quite a unique sort of structure, unique partnership. So that's fabulous to hear. Now, the asset is based in the Yukon, correct?
Yeah, we're probably in the best part of the Yukon. For those of your, Yukon is sort of having its moment at the moment. I think it's had some challenges for sure, but the resource endowment's fantastic. And this is on what I would call the infrastructure backbone of the Yukon. It's on the Klondike Highway between Whitehorse and Dawson City. It's got power, it's got water, it's got people, it's got all the sort of things that most projects in the Yukon don't have. So that's an advantage for us, and it is, it's in the Minto Carmax belt. It's a long known belt with good copper endowment, and it's been a good producer, solid producer for a number of years, and we're just trying to reinvigorate that and give a underloved and underappreciated asset the attention it needs.
So, why did it get into creditor protection? Why did it go bankrupt?
Yeah, it's a question that I've been asked a lot by all the investors for the last several months. And two things they keep asking: what are you going to do differently, and what did they do that maybe you're not going to try to repeat? So I think the simple storyline here is when they came back into production, they were in a bit of a rush. They assumed that they were able to mine from both underground and the open pit. And the reality was that the sort of permits that they had in place didn't actually allow them to do that. So they were only able to produce from the underground. They were only able to fill this mill 50%. And as you know, you can't make money running something at 50%. It just doesn't work that way. I think the other thing that they had that was quite challenging is this is a copper, gold, silver resource. And the gold silver was previously streamed. 100% of the gold and silver was effectively streamed. So they weren't benefiting for about 35% of the value of the ore. So what we've got is that stream has been extinguished. We now own all the copper, all the gold, and the silver. First time since 2007 that the operator's been able to say that. That changes the financial opportunity here before us. And it's really a fresh start. We have no obligations or liabilities of note. And our job here is to put that plan together that we can actually go execute. So we're doing things differently because we're taking a planning approach. Someone asked me the other day, what does that mean? And I said, well, we're planning to make a plan. We're measuring twice to cut once. And I can't stress that enough. We often get in a rush in our industry. We often get in a rush in our home life. This is not that. We just need to be disciplined, take an approach, and be patient. And so far, the shareholders are responding to that. They want this to be a success, and they know we're not rushing back into productions.
Excellent. Well, before we get in all that exciting stuff, which I know you're going to love to talk about, a bit more of the technical side, the deposit and what it is and all that. Why don't we get this cap table stuff out of the way? So, approximately how many shares are out today?
Yeah, so we've got about, I think it's about 130 million shares out, and there's about another 8 to 10 on top of that in terms of options and warrants in behind it. It's a pretty clean cap table. As you probably know, or your investors may know, we've gone through sort of two financings over the last 5 months. One was what we called a bridge financing, and that was really because of this extended bankruptcy process. We needed to bring funds into the vehicle to get the deal closed. So we raised about Canadian 4.5 million in July of 2025. And then we did another 40 at 56 cents in September. And then we closed that and wrapped up the transaction and then started trading again on November 4th. And that's a big day for everybody. But the reality is we're not in a rush. We recognize this is an RTO vehicle that's come back into trading. We're working through it. And quite honestly, the last month's been really good. The share price performance in the last few days is kind of what I like to see.
Based upon your last sort of financials, what you're able to talk about, approximately how much cash do you still have remaining?
So we started our drill program in advance of the close of the transaction. So we actually had 4 drills turning in October. with the view that we really need to get ahead of the resource definition, et cetera. So we've worked through about five and a half, $6 million of that $40 million financing. And then we've also initiated engineering with SRK and Hatch helping us out. So we're in that sort of 33 to $34 million. Still a lot to spend. We've got another 25,000 meters to drill here before March, and the bills are piling up. But we've got a good kitty.
Excellent. And with some of your past experience, can you do this sort of work with your hands tied behind your back? This pretty easy for you, pretty run of the mill stuff.
You know what? Our industry just requires love and attention every
Sure.
day, all day long, right? I mean, I think you know it. We need to make sure that people are safe, that they're operating well, that they've got the right gear, that they're not in a rush. So that's kind of the things that keep me up at night, in all honesty. I really want to make people very, very empowered to operate safely. But I think the second one is just about communications. We're working with all the regulators. We're working with the suppliers in the Yukon. We're working with the First Nation, making sure that they're alive to what we're doing. So lots of day to day communications. And then the part I love, because I actually think I'm a bit of a student of the industry. I'm learning every day, just like everyone else. I love this industry. So you do got to dive into the details. The geology matters, the metallurgy matters, the mining matters, et cetera. So it's sort of full on, but that's the job, right? I love it.
And just to wrap up our cap table, and then we'll get on to the project stuff a bit more. Out of the 130-ish million that you have out,
Yeah.
what would be some of the major sort of shareholder sort of blocks? Like what sort of approximate percentage would insiders sort of vote? And I think you mentioned that the Selkirk First Nations are a pretty major owner. So what would be some of those amounts? And is Justra a shareholder?
Yeah, so I'll go through it. And yes, Frank Justra is a shareholder. He's not the biggest shareholder, but he's a shareholder. Obviously, this is a birthed company out of the Fiore Group, the incubator group here in Vancouver. Obviously, really knowledgeable about the space. It's great to have Frank along as a core investor. I guess insiders, we're probably just around 12%, maybe a little bit higher. I'm probably the single largest insider. I'm just shy of 5% of the equity. And then in behind that is the Selkirk First Nation. As I said, they acquired the asset, it was contributed into the vehicle. They have 22.3% equity. And that's a long and strong sort of position from their perspective. And then the balance is we've got about 40% retail and another 30% institutional. And that mix is sort of changing on a daily basis. But there's some names in there that your investors would recognize that probably don't mind me saying it. We've got, Peter Brown. He's, been in the space. I actually was speaking to him earlier today. He says,
Nice.
I've been financing these things since the 80s. They just keep coming back. And what's important about that is these are investors that understand the resource sector and they know that good resources in the ground keep on giving. So it's really great to have people like that and supporting us because at the end of the day, this is hard work and we need investor support, but they're good. They're good people to have on board.
Excellent. Well, that's very good. Do you guys have any debt?
We do not. We have no debt. It's a strange place to be, I know, for a mining company, but that day will come. But right now, we've got the resources that we've raised, the sort of 40 million plus that 4.5. The objective here is to get through a series of studies and plans so that we can make a proper restart decision sometime in early 2027. So we've got enough funds to get us through to that sort of decision timeframe. And as opportunity presents itself, we may go raise some additional money because this is also a very compelling exploration story. But at the moment, to get to the restart decision, we've got enough funds before we have to start talking about debt.
Excellent. And the structure of the financings were those done? I guess the bridge would be private placement. That would be free trading today.
It is, yeah.
Then
I
the
mean, there are some of the insiders, like myself, and some of the funders of those early rounds. We are sort of escrowed for a period of time, so
Mhm.
that paper shouldn't be moving anytime soon. But the 40 million, all of that, the day it dropped was effectively free trading, aside from the insiders.
Yeah, it was done as a subscription receipt offering, was it not?
It was a
Yep.
sub receipt, and I get
Great.
asked a lot of questions about why'd you do that or why'd you do this. At the end of the day, you do what you do, right? We had
I
good
think it's
support through
great.
it. Yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
great personally. I think it's kind of like an IPO
It
in
is.
that it's free trading instead of having this date that's not all that far out, 4 months, and everybody just salivating to like hit a bid. Uh, you're not going to have everybody like waiting to like sell. They can sell whenever they want, or they can accumulate more if they
That's
think
right.
there's good value. And based upon your sort of valuation, I was looking at some of the comparables and things, and I was kind of scratching my head, going, "What am I missing? This looks very compelling." So why don't we let you get into the asset side of things? So we got this Minto Mine asset. You guys are kind of a single asset company,
Yeah.
uh, a very storied sort of past producer. For those that are a bit unfamiliar with it, again, what type of deposit is this? What's the sort of geological kind of structure? And you mentioned it's been operated as both an underground and open pit. Maybe you could talk a bit about the history of how it operated as well.
Sure. Well, the famous question at the front is, what type of deposit is it? I'd love to tell you. What I can say is it's probably poorly understood. What we do know is that the mineralization is standard, very good grade chalcopyrite bornite in essentially a granitoid host. So there's lots of speculation about what it is and what it isn't. What we do know right now is it's a zone of mineralization that extends over about 5 kilometers of strike and about a kilometer of width. And it's been mined since 2007 in both underground and open pit. It produces an exceptionally high grade concentrate. So the copper grades that you see out in the global market price right now around concentrate are around 27 to 28% copper. Some are in the 32% range. This is in the 38 to 40% range. It's a very clean con. It's known in the market. It's been sold in Asia. It's been sold in Europe, globally, when it was in production, and there's a lot of anticipation about it coming forward. But back to the deposit, we're still learning about it. So that's one of the things I'm excited about. We've got a crack geoscience team really diving back into this and making no assumptions. Right? They're doing the primary geoscience that allows us to find more ore and then extend that exploration outside of the main property. But so simply put, it's a good quality copper, gold, silver ore body. It mines well and it produces a really good concentrate. In about a year's time, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you what the deposit is, and its genesis and whatnot. But right now, it's a little bit of a mystery.
Well, that's pretty cool that you still
Well,
have that mystery to solve, because normally you don't get that far to to have something get into production and not
no,
really
that's right.
understand what it is. So again, that's not what you've done. That's what you're inheriting. Somebody else kind of did that. Um, Now, how much sort of investments sort of been made into the infrastructure, and what sort of infrastructure remains on site today?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And by the way, my apologies, but I love this stuff, so I could talk about it for hours. But um, there's about $300 million that had been invested in this mine site and its processing facilities, the roads, the power, the transmission lines, all of the sort of things that actually make this thing work. And that goes back to about 2005 when Sherwood started the development there. They ramped up into a small underground mine, around 900 tons per day mill facility, and then they quickly ramped that up to 4,100 tons per day. It's still a modest sized mine, but because of the grades, it produces a fair amount of copper. And then again, through the life of the mine, they continue to invest in camp, some of the on-site facilities like labs and workshops. All of that is there for the taking. So that was acquired by the First Nation for about $6.5 million out of bankruptcy. So therein lies one of the real value opportunities. We don't have to invest that money to bring it back into restart. We do have to invest additional dollars for sure, but we don't have to do the lion's share. Most companies are having to build roads, build power, et cetera. We don't have to do that. We got a fully functional camp. It services about 400 people on rotation. The thing I hear most about the people from site when I go is they love the camp because they have their own bed in their own private room with their own bathroom. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but that's a big deal when you're working 12-hour shifts. In the dead of winter, you come back to your own room, you flick on your TV or you play games or do whatever it is, but you can do it and you can be comfortable. So the other things are functioning mill. So this is the gear that breaks down the rock and allows you to produce that concentrate. I'm so impressed with the team here that's maintained this asset since 2003 and gone through this bankruptcy. You know, Keir, what they did, these men and women, they would go into the mill and nobody told them to do this. They would turn these mills once a week. And the reason that you do that, just think about a gear on your car. If you
Mhm.
leave a car not moving for 2 years, bad things happen. Same thing here. These people did this because they knew there was the opportunity for this to go back into production. It's probably saved us millions of dollars in rehabilitation costs. So it's a great gift. The rest of it is kind of as said, right? Underground facilities, open pit facilities, roads, all the things you want. Now we just have to have a plan. What's the plan?
Yeah, and I would imagine to get listed and complete an RTO and all of this, you need to amend or update a 43101. You would have amended it to list, but you would have been probably relying upon some old data. So when's the last sort of like fresh resource, and like are there any reserves, mining reserves? What's the reserves and resources look like?
Yeah, no, for sure. So, very, very good point. So, we did do an update. It's called a mineral resource update technical report. It was issued on August 6th. And there's two things that are pretty unique about that. The past operator, although they failed to, really make the thing sing, one of the things that they did between 2021 and 2022 is they drilled about 80,000 meters of drilling. They were never in a position to update that into an updated resource statement. So we've done that. We've taken that new drill information and incorporated it into that resource statement. We currently have indicated and inferred resources. We don't have measured yet, but the combined sort of total there is around 36 million tons. And again, you got to go look at the details. It's indicated and inferred. I'm sort of bringing them together in a global view.
Sure. Yes. Yes. You should keep them separate, but
You should.
you're helping us do the math. So yes,
And
we've taken that point.
no. And again, look, I should be grilled on that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, that's why we're doing the drilling. We're trying to upgrade the inferred to indicated, the indicated to measured. That's part of the plan. But you still have to have a sort of a vision. So we've got about just shy of 900 million pounds of copper contained in those resources. We've got about 500,000 ounces of gold and about 4.7 million ounces of silver. And the idea here is to further define and describe that, but also add to it. But that mineral resource update it's a really unique thing. When do you come into an asset where people have cleaned out the garage and they put all the stuff on the shelves for you, but no one's opened the garage door to look inside the garage? That's kind of what we were given here. And now our job is to add to that and explain it in a rational sort of way, get a mine plan around it, and go get the thing re-permitted.
So you're able to inherit, what was it, 80,000 meters of
Meters.
drilling?
Yeah. And they did a good job too. Like this is no one likes to go into a bankruptcy. No one decides to do that. It was unfortunate, but they
Mm.
did good exploration work. Not only did they define some new zones, they actually discovered in a property that's been explored since 1971, they discovered about 5 brand new zones between pits. So like this is sort of exciting stuff, right? It's very rare in my experience that you get to come into an asset with 380,000 meters of drilling completed and there's still new discoveries. It's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes you got to get ahead of it, and these guys have given us a bit of a gift.
What would be the dollar cost if you were going to go do 80,000 meters today?
Well, I'm going to say it's about 30 million bucks. So we're still trying to nail down the cost that
Sure.
we're having right now.
Sure.
We have an objective, obviously,
Right.
but call it somewhere between 250 and 300 meters dollars per meter. And I'm
Mhm.
going to say that's a bit conservative. It could be a little bit higher than that. And that's just inflation, right? The world's getting more expensive all the time.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
but yeah, that's at least what it would cost.
So you were able to inherit that, and it's not like they drilled this stuff at a bunch of places that didn't make sense. Some of it
No.
was quite useful. How much bigger did the resource get by incorporating that data?
So about 45 to depends on how you do the math, 45 to 48% bigger. And that sounds precise, but it's
Wow.
probably not. But it's a significant increase. We have more mineral resources in indicated and inferred today than there has been since 2016, including the sort of depletion from mining. So that's a good signal. There's more work to be done. I definitely want to increase that position. And that's part of what the drilling's doing. We've just issued our first initial drill results from this 50,000 meter campaign that we started in late August. Good results. They're exactly what we were hoping, and they're even better in some instance. Good high grade copper mineralization over mineable widths at the Minto Northwest Zone target, which is a new zone. And we've effectively increased, just with 4 drill holes, we've effectively increased the footprint of that zone by about 90%. So we're on track.
Well, that seems pretty spectacular right there. Wow, what a
It's good.
deal. What a pickup. So walk me through kind of is this thing like deep? Is it at surface? Like with it being open pit and underground, how deep underground does it go? What
Yeah,
sort of, maybe you could give us, we're not pulling up a 3D map
a
or
cross
anything. So
section, no.
yeah, you can just kind of explain a bit to us.
So it's a really good question. As I said at the beginning, this has historically been both an underground and an open pit operation. That's what we envision it going forward. It's probably going to have 2 undergrounds that will inform the production and 1 open pit. And the idea is to just balance the production between those 3 zones going forward. The mineralization that's in the core property, it, like I said, it extends about 3.5 to 5 kilometers of strike. It's about a kilometer wide, and it goes down to about 400 meters depth. That's kind of not the limits of where it's gone, but that's the limits of where the drilling's taken us. And generally speaking, these ore bodies are about 100 to 125 meters wide, about 30 to 35 meters thick, and up to 400 meters long. And then within each one of these ore bodies, and this is really fascinating, this is part of the geology puzzle, is that there's a low grade shell of about 1 to 1.5% copper that is across, let's say, 35 meters thick. And then often within that, particularly in the northern zones, you'll get sort of a 5 to 10 meter thickness of 5 to 10% copper. And so that really makes these very attractive mineable targets in the underground. And when they get enough of them sort of stacked on top of each other or lined up, then they become good open pit targets. But it's really interesting mineralization. And part of our job is to just make sure we're confident about those in the zones that we're at, and then obviously find new ones.
Excellent. And so let's talk a little bit about, well, you kind of talked a bit about grade. So if you could kind of walk through the kind of the grade. So like on a copper equivalent, what's your grade? And then what's copper? And then what's gold? And what's silver, if you wouldn't
Yeah,
mind?
yeah, for sure. So it's always a little dangerous to try to do the averages, but at the end of the day, we've got about 5 different zones here. 2 in open pit configurations, 3 in the underground. We fully expect there to be another underground sort of one. And the grades that you're sort of seeing again across the more thick mineable widths are about 1.1 to 1.4% copper, zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.7 grams per ton gold, and about 4 to 12 grams per ton silver. We do have some areas where, as I said, we'll have like a 6 to 10 meter thickness of 5 to 10% copper, and then the gold's about 1 gram per ton gold and up to 20 grams per ton silver. So it's sort of that's kind of what we're seeing in general. And when you average it all out, we're sort of targeting that 1.5% copper, sort of half a gram per ton gold, and again, up to 12, 15 grams per ton silver. On a copper equivalent basis, and this is always surprises me, because the value of copper is actually so high, even though gold and silver are crazy high too, right? We've effectively doubled the price of gold and silver in 2 years, which has never been reflected in these economics, by the way. That's a big deal, but the price of copper is also very high at $5.10 today. You're sort of talking on the high end. On an equivalency basis, it adds another 0.3 to 0.5% copper. So
Okay.
we're almost 2% copper equivalent.
That'd be considered pretty high grade in this sort of day and age, would it not?
It,
For
it
kind of a combination open pit underground, like we're seeing, for a large where you might be, doing a lot more tonnage milled and have a, couple $1 billion price tag to get it into development, you're looking
yeah,
at, in BC, you're looking at things like 0.3, 0.4% sort of copper. If we're looking across the globe at the average new copper mine, again, just like gold, the grades have been going down, tonnages have been going up. So I would say you're probably fairly high grade. Would you not say that?
I mean, aside from pretty unique deposits like some of the stuff out of Central Africa,
Mhm.
the Congo, DRC, etc., and some unique deposits, let's say in the Pacific Rim, this would be in the sort of the top quartile on a grade basis. It's a bespoke sort of ore body, right? These are good, solid grades across mineable widths. We're not going to be Escondida. We're not going to be Highland Valley Copper, which some of your folks know about, but we are projecting to produce about 30,000 tons of copper equivalent in an updated set of mine plans going forward. That's kind of what it produced in the past. So that's about 75,000 tons of concentrate per year at very, very good grades and value. We do this right. This is going to look really good for a lot of people because our job is not just to describe the resources and describe the mine plans. It's to do it cost effectively. Infrastructure paid for, the power lines are there. We don't have to invest money there. We just have to get a good set of plans. So I'm pretty excited about it because I do think we have that almost unique opportunity to it's a bit of an arbitrage opportunity, right? We've already benefited from prior investment in the heavy lift. Our job is now just to operationalize it.
So are you knocking on Shane's door not too far down the hall there? He's got some pretty good experience helping to take a formerly bankrupt mine and come up with like developing a plan, making sure you measure twice and cut once. Is
Yeah.
that somebody within Sir Fiore group that you're able to trade some war stories with and get his advice?
Well, it's not just his, but yes, definitely. I think the best advice he said to me, he said, get ready for the marketing, because at the end of the day, we are storytellers. Our job here is to take our technical expertise and our business expertise and our life experience and make a rational story about it, why it's interesting. So he said the biggest thing for him is he used to do that with his teams on the ground and project folks and stuff like that. He says it's just a little different with the investors because they're very interested and they want to know where their money's going and is it a real opportunity. I think on the more technical side of things, like he's just a wealth of knowledge, right? He's a very experienced fellow, and he's going to teach me how to do the math better. I'm sure as we go forward. But the other folks on the team are also good, right? This is an exploration story, so some of the
Yeah.
founders of this company, like Rob McLeod, he's done a great job. We're going to still
Yeah.
get advice from him going forward. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, Rob's really doing quite well. My wife's family knows his family quite well. My wife's mother was mayor up in Stewart, BC, which is
Oh, right.
obviously where Rob's from and whatnot. So
I'm
yeah,
assume I assume you've been hyderized.
I've been hyderized. Yes,
Very good.
absolutely. Yes, and we don't go up there too often now. It's pretty small place.
It's
But
beautiful though.
it's a beautiful place. Yeah, it's very unique and whatnot. But anyways, so you guys have about 36 million tons. If I'm adding some things together that you're not really able to do, do you
Yeah.
think it could get much bigger than that, or is that sort of like an appropriate size?
Well, it's going to get bigger. I guarantee that. I mean, it will just because of the nature of the deposits and the work that's been done. The question is, is it a double or is it a triple? We've got three basic exploration and resource objectives here in front of us over the next little while. The first is let's figure out what this thing is, get it defined to the extent that we can inform those mine plans. That's sort of, it's not niggly work, but it's really where you're defining the edges of the ore body. You're making sure the continuity of the mineralization is good. Call that about 30%. The other 30% is within the mine property itself, is to test these targets where there's ore grade mineralization, but no follow up. So, last hole of their last drill program, the previous operator, and I shudder as a geologist thinking about this. Hole 58 drilled between two pits, the main pit and what's known as Minto North Pit, in a zone that had never been tested, 11.4% copper over 5 meters. It's not an ore body, but it's a good indication that it needs follow up. So we're going to hit those zones as well, try to get them defined and added. And then we're going to take that knowledge and we're going to do something that no one's done for 30 years. We're going to disrespect the claim boundary and we're going to go north and we're going to go south and we're going to go east and we're going to actually do exploration based off really good knowledge and some great indications where people just haven't had the opportunity to go in the past because the First Nations have controlled those lands and haven't really allowed folks to explore on them. We don't have it all buttoned up yet, but the intent here is to do rational work, come to another set of agreements with the First Nation and see if we can extend that exploration north and south. So those are the three sort of things. I'm very strongly of the view that this will give us additional tons. And we're already seeing that just in this first little bit of drilling that we've done. As I said, in the Minto Northwest zone, which had about 1.1 to 1.2 million tons defined previously, we've already increased that by about 90% just with 4 initial drill holes.
And how far are these different? You've got some, like, you got Ridgetop, Copper Keel, Minto East, Area 118, Minto North that you kind of talked about. How far are these areas away from each other? Is it a pretty tight footprint, or is there quite a bit of space between them?
It's pretty tight. I'm going to ask a question I probably shouldn't ask, but like if you're a golfer and you can crush your drive, so you can basically go from the north of this property, hit like a 320-yard drive, hit the next zone, hit another 320-yard drive, hit the next zone. Then you got to crack one over the pit. Think about it as like a long, like a long Rory McIlroy drive, and then you hit another one. So I'm being a bit facetious, but it's a tight site, and the zones are reasonably well spaced. What we kind of see, we're still figuring this out, but think about it of a zone that's about 1 kilometer long, and then there's a 500-meter step out, and then there's another kilometer-long zone sort of thing. That's kind of what we're seeing, and there's about 5 of those zones. So.
And you're underground. How deep is that? You got a portal, you got an elevator. What's the sort of setup that you've got? How deep is it?
Yeah, it's a very traditional sort of underground. So it's a decline. So a portal, decline. There's no shafts, so you're not hoisting and whatnot. Everything is done sort of truck and buggy. The underground infrastructure is pretty extensive. So we go down, I think the deepest point is about 320 meters below surface. And it's accessed historically 4 zones in the underground. One's called the Copper Keel South, the Minto, and the Minto East. So, and we fully expect to see those zones continue going forward. How we access them and how we make them more productive as a mining piece is part of the study work that we're doing. My guess is that we will develop at least one more underground portal and decline, but possibly 2. And that's just about efficiencies, right? You know, when you're hauling stuff 3 kilometers underground and then you got to haul it another 3 kilometers on surface to get to the mill, that's not super efficient. So we're going to look at how we can make some really discrete capital investments and make that more efficient.
And will some of the drilling happen underground then? You'll have an underground rig, or is it all from surface?
It's all from surface at the moment. It's a little bit of a sore point. You know, one of the challenges here with any asset that goes into sort of care and maintenance and whatnot, there were some decisions made where much of the surface water was actually put back in the underground. So they flooded the underground. We have to go through that dewatering. So until we do that, we're not going to be drilling anything from the underground. But the good story is nothing is crazy deep, right? Like I started my career, you know, in the early 1990s, late 1980s. We were drilling 1,500, 1,700 meter holes back then. Like we're never going to be drilling that here, not for the foreseeable future. I think our deepest hole plan is about 480.
And this is all going to be core drilling?
Yeah, everything is NQ style core or sized core, which is great for metallurgy and testing and all that sort of stuff. So we're doing the right investment up front. And so far, really good. Like this rock coming out of the ground is excellent. We're getting excellent core recovery. It's not heavily broken or faulted ground, so the drillers are pretty happy. I think their biggest complaint is it's starting to get cold, but so be it. But yeah, no, I'm really impressed. Sorry. I grew up in the industry in Flin Flon, Manitoba, and it's cold.
You know the cold. You know the cold. Yeah. And how much drilling sort of been done? You guys put out some interesting drill holes just the other day. Yeah. So maybe you could give us a bit of a highlight. You had some pretty eye-popping grades, and you got your stock price up a little bit. So
yeah, well, you're going to have to teach me about how to get the stock price up. But the
more of this.
What's that?
Just more of this.
More of this. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Look, I think the drilling's gone really well. Like I said, we started this drill program in August. We started with one drill, added another, just make sure things are safe, environment's being managed, all that sort of stuff. We're just about 26,400 or 500 meters into the program. It's gone really well. We're trying to get to about 33,000 meters by Christmas. We'll do a bit of a shutdown and then pick up going into the new year. And we've just got the first assay results again from these first 4 holes. It's called the Minto Northwest Zone. Lots of different acronyms. Essentially, this is a tabular zone that's to the west of a former pit called the Minto North Pit. And it's that 1.1 million tons of very good grade mineralization. And what we did with these drill holes, pretty smart. We went to one platform. We drilled 9 holes from the one platform and then moved to another platform, drilled another 4. We've just got the results from the first 5 holes, 4 of which are in this zone. And each one of them basically hit this panel or this lens of mineralization as we hoped. And we did step out. So again, our first step out, I think, was 75 meters to the south. Then we did another step out where we angled the hole a bit differently, another 100-meter step out, and they both hit the zone. And what we hit is exactly as the geoscientists predicted. So Stacey Jones is our VP of exploration, and she sort of said, "Colin, we're going to go through some pretty boring granitoid sort of rocks. We're going to pick up a little alteration, and then we're going to get some what's called foliiform or structure that where the bedding looks like it's all lined up. And it's not really bedding, it's actually structure. It's called schistose sort of geology. Anyways, you'll pick up a bit of chalcopyrite, a bit of boronite, and that bit is about 1%. And then we're going to hit a zone about 5 to 10 meters thick. And she was bang on. It was 9 meters and 8 meters thick. And the average grades in those 2 zones was 4.5% and 5.5% copper. So that's exactly what we were hoping for. And the more important thing is it's expanded the zone. If your readers or investors are looking, they'll see a couple really simple maps, and I draw their attention to the 2. One is a surface map, and it's got a dashed outline that shows how much bigger it's gotten. And then the cross section basically shows where the holes have intersected the zone. So it's a good early result.
So you got a lot more holes pending.
We do. We got 98 holes that we've completed. We've got 5. So the news flow here is going to pick up. We're going to try to not, inundate everybody with news releases every day. But the idea is we'll probably have another one before Christmas. And then we'll have a series of them. I sort of think of it as stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, 5, right out to April. And that news flow will hopefully tell that recurring theme. We're adding resources. We're defining the ones that we know. And my hope is we have a couple little discovery stories to tell at the same time.
Well, and it sounds like you can work pretty much year round. What's your sort of exploration season kind of look like?
This is a really interesting part of the Canadian North. This is not boggy territory. It's not flat tundra, etc. It's sort of rolling hills in the central part of the Yukon. The access is good. Fortunately, we have a camp and a camp that works with a kitchen. So, yes, it's cold out and it's cold in the winter, but the reality is the drillers and the teams, they get to come back into an actual camp. They're not living out of a tent, etc. It's pretty well appointed. So that gives us the opportunity to work through the whole winter. And then the summer, our real limitations is we have a crossing of the Yukon River. So to get to this property, we have to cross the Yukon River. And in the shoulder season, it's a bit tough, right? There's big hunks of ice coming down the river. That's not good. And then there's a barge operation that we run in the summers. So that helps us. But the reality is we can kind of explore all year round.
Have you been to the property?
So I've been there now 10 times since I joined on August 1st. I've been to my philosophy on these sort of things is boots on the ground, right?
That's great.
Yeah, it's also important for the people that are up there working every day. They need to know that we're all in the same journey together. And the other thing is I sort of work experientially. I work better when I see stuff on the ground. And I'm better able to contextualize things so that we address problems early if they do present themselves. But equally, if we see opportunity, it's better to be there and say, you know what, let's go for it. Let's go do that.
So
the food's okay, dude. The food's
that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're active on the ground. It's nice to hear. It's refreshing. Sometimes when I ask these questions, I don't necessarily get the best answer. So that's a good answer. That's great. We'd like to hear that. We want to know that you're one with your team and you're with your technical background. It's important that you kind of, see it as well and can have some real time with the team. So that's good to hear. I hope you're going again here. Well, it's
Well,
cold, so you could be one with
I'm
the team.
I'm going 2 more times before Christmas, just so
Oh,
folks
that's
understand.
excellent.
Yeah.
That's
Well, look,
great.
it's easy. It's a 2-hour flight. I mean, it's the simplest
Yeah.
place to get to, right?
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Maybe you'll connect through Kelowna. I'll hop on with you and go see one day. But
You do know
hey,
the
what's
flight, the Air North flight
yeah.
goes directly from Whitehorse, Vancouver to Kelowna for good
Yeah,
reason.
I
Yeah.
I fly it sometimes.
Oh, okay.
It's little. Sometimes it's a little easier. They got some different times, and
Sure.
knock on wood, they tend to run a bit more on time because there's not as many of them. So,
Plus, they give you a
not
chocolate
yeah,
cookie, right? I mean, it's like
yeah,
Christmas every day.
yeah, yeah. I quite like it. It's good, but that's sort of a good dovetail to kind of this First Nation partnership. So, I'm gonna say some stuff here. Like investors are always concerned about political risk.
Yeah.
When we're assessing, various different areas within Canada specifically, the first question is always, well, what's the relationship with the First Nation? What's the political atmosphere? What's sort of like going on? It's also not necessarily like First Nation versus like a commercial business. You also sometimes have, government sort of involvement as well, sort of stipulating what has to happen and in some cases maybe magnifying or making the issue that increasing the tension. You guys have a pretty unique kind of model. You're obviously in the Yukon, so it's quite different than what's going on in British Columbia. But maybe again, you could just sort of like walk through this unique Canada First sort of unique sort of model from a mining company, and give you a chance to explain a little bit about who the Selkirk First Nation are.
Yeah. Um, it's a really interesting question because I've heard the word model used a lot. Like, is this a new model for the future, sort of thing? I don't think the Selkirk First Nation came at it that way. It may end up being that, but they came out at this as a long-term sort of landowner and kind of partner in the mine, but they were really only receiving a NSR royalty, which was great. But they really weren't sort of getting what they wanted in terms of the true benefits of really capacity building businesses for their community, and benefiting beyond what you would call the traditional IBAs or investment agreements, et cetera. They were functional, but they didn't really live up to what they wanted. And then in the latter years of the mine life, they started to get concerned about water and environment in a way that they should have been concerned. So what they basically have done is they've created the model because they were frustrated. They basically said, look, maybe this thing has a future, but we don't want to be passive anymore. We want to be part of that future. We want to be in the room having discussions that we think should be had in a way that makes sense for our community. So they're the brave ones. They're the ones that said, let's go acquire this thing with their money out of bankruptcy and see if it has a future. We've come into the piece because they rightly recognize you need some expertise in the capital markets, the technical side of things to put it together. So I give them full credit for setting this thing up. So maybe it will be a model for other folks, but it's pretty rare because it's rare you can acquire on pennies on the dollar this kind of asset, right? Out of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Having said that, they're invested, they want this to work, but not at all costs. So for me, I'm never going to assume something with the First Nation. This is hard work. This is just like being married. This is just like having friends and family over for dinner once a week. You need to continually invest time in it. They're smart people. They're interested in what we're doing. They have very good experience, particularly on the permitting side. So right now, what we're basically doing is it's sort of an open book sort of arrangement whereby on the engineering side, they're in the meetings. Their technical advisors are with us. On the social and community side, we're starting off. It's a bit slower than anyone would like, but we need to sort of build some momentum. It's going to get better, but it's pretty good so far. The conversations are almost weekly. And then the last thing is it's up to us to sort of, show up with regularity and walk the talk. And sometimes we make mistakes, right? Sometimes we don't get everything right, and sometimes and I'll be the first to say it, I make mistakes every day. Our job, though, is to just minimize the surprises on the community side. Their chief of the First Nation is a woman by the name of Chief Sharon Nelson. She is very, very thoughtful. She supported the acquisition with the support of the community of this asset, 100% support of their community. But they have high aspirations for it. So now it's for us to actually now do the hard work and make it work. We've just hired onto the team, and I think this might be a first in at least the Yukon. It's not in BC. I know the other companies have brought First Nation experienced people onto their executive team. We've just hired Kevin McGinty, who's a former chief of the nation. He was the head of the lands department. His passion here is for responsible and sustainable mining. We've brought on Morris Morrison, also a former acting chief, younger fella, to lead our community programs and liaisons and work with Selkirk DevCorp. Like this is good stuff, right? We just need to do more of it. And I'll always be a little bit nervous about this because my wife keeps telling me, Colin, if you don't invest in the relationship, it's not going to give back to you. So we need to do that. The same thing with the First Nation. And so far, so good. But I'm not going to rest on my laurels on this.
Excellent to hear. That's good. I saw the recent appointments to the team. Great to continue to see good diversity at the team level and really making sure that you got local sort of involved. A lot of times, traditionally, publicly traded mining companies don't necessarily sort of like do that with the local sort of community of where they're looking to do business. So that's great that you guys are doing that. Why don't we sort of move on to like some key catalysts and get to sort of wrapping this up for about 52 minutes in.
This is a long interview. Sorry, but it's fun.
No, it's good. It's our first look. It's a deep dive. We want to cover top to bottom, soup to nuts. So thank you for answering a bunch of questions. So you've already indicated you got a whole bunch of pending drill results. They're going to be from all over the place. So some are going to be, some could be some high grade. Some will be more consistent with kind of, the
average
MRE.
grade.
The average grade. You're doing all of this so that you can do another updated MRE. Is that correct?
So there's sort of three things that are part of the plan to make a plan. So the drilling is to get enough definition of these zones that we can do an updated mineral resource estimate. But the real objective of that is to get it into a preliminary economic assessment. So that's a technical report term that many of your investors know, PEA. So the idea is to get enough of information from the drilling that we can support those updated mine plans and technical studies, which are all happening right now. And then the third part of that puzzle is the permitting piece. So all of this is happening concurrently and will go on for several months, but we're trying to get that MRE out by late Q2, middle of the year 2026. And that will coincide with the PEA, same sort of timing. I'm hopeful I can get it a little bit earlier, but the reality is we need this done well.
Yeah.
But that's, I would ask investors to sort of think about three things between now and then. The drill results will be coming out, and that's important information. We will probably do a technical study update of some form. It'll probably be in a news release or something, but it'll give people confidence that we're moving in the right direction. And then that sort of PEA and MRE update mid-year. And then we will start the feasibility study.
Okay, great. Yeah. That's good. And I was going to ask, you reminded me, permitting. So this was a permitted mine before. What sort of new permitting process will you need to sort of go through in parallel with all the necessary exploration work to get to a production decision?
Yeah, so we have permits and authorizations to allow us to do lots of things. What we don't have right now, though, is we don't have a permit and authorization to do what I would call a fully integrated mine plan for 12 to 15 years. So we're looking hard at the process of amending and modifying the existing permits to allow us to do that. And, I'm new to the Yukon, at least in this sense. I understand the geology a bit better, but I must admit the permitting is a little bit confusing. And so we're working through that. We've already reached out to the various levels of government, and they're being super supportive. But we're trying to make this pragmatic, right? There's a lot of pressure on the permitting agency in the Yukon. We've got a great new government that has a strong view and strong support about resource development. They've just come into power in early November. They have a strong resource mandate, but they also know they need to manage it well. So I think there's a back and forth there. And my job and our job is to make sure we give them good, clear indication where we're going, why we're doing it, and how we're going to manage it. And with that, I think we've got a good path forward. But it's probably, everyone will tell you in every jurisdiction, the timeline to those authorizations is the hardest to predict.
Oh
I'm very
yeah,
comfortable we're going to get there, but it's
sure.
a lot of bi-weekly and weekly meetings. So
Yeah. Well, you can't speak for them. You gotta let them have their final say. So it's just the process. You don't necessarily control the outcome. So a question would be, look, is this a company that's seriously looking to put a mine back into production, or are you looking to sort of build it to flip it, build it to sell it, or advance it so you could sell it to somebody else who maybe could handle permitting and might already have operating mines in the Yukon?
well, fortunately, there's only one operating mine in the Yukon, so the list is short.
Okay.
And I'm going to say we probably have the best insights on permitting, partly because of the First Nations engagement here. Like they are effectively a strong mechanism to support permitting. They understand it better than I do, for sure. So I'm going to say we're able to do that. The fact that the most of the infrastructure is built and there and ready, I'm not that concerned about our ability to actually turn this back into a restart. So my objective and what I've asked shareholders to give me support to do is to make that restart decision. How it all plays out after that, I think we can finance it. I think we can get it done. But time will tell. Right now, it's clear marching orders, bring this thing back into production with the right set of plans, the right sort of permits, and the right sort of support from the First Nation.
So 2026 is a pretty important year. That's going to basically get you all the data that you need in order to start a plan, a restart plan, and
Yeah,
then in looking at the latest pitch deck that I think was uploaded yesterday to your site, looks like you're looking at sometime in 2027 to be able to make a restart decision.
that's right.
Is that a fair? Is that a pretty accurate sort of like timeline? So next year is very critical in terms of like seeing a lot of the drilling, updated mineral resource estimate, getting into sort of PEA situation, and hopefully getting some movement on the permitting situation.
Yeah, 2026 critical year. I might say every year is critical, but
Sure.
2026 is going to be really important. Right now, from where I sit, and again, everyone can listen and try to understand some of my experience, but from where I sit, I don't see any sort of fatal flaws between now and a restart decision. We still have to do the work though, right? We still have to get the economics right. We still have to work through that process. But I don't see any what I would call sort of impediments to that. We'll work through them deliberately and thoughtfully, and we'll get there. And for me, probably the most important decision that happens later in 2026 is how do we finance this thing? So right now, we've got a couple really interesting things that we can do. One is it's effectively going to be a low cost restart when you compare it to the broader industry. That's because all the big capital has been spent on roads and plants and stuff like that. We will put additional dollars in for sure, but we also have the concentrate. This is a highly sought after concentrate. We own the concentrate now. Before it was an offtake arrangement. That's by the wayside. We can use that as a source of non-dilution financing and funding for a restart going forward. And we're going to learn more about that through the year. But ideally, we get into early 2027. Not only do we have permits and plans, but we also have a financing plan. So 2026, a big deal.
Excellent. Well, Colin, I think that's a really good way to wrap it up. Is there anything final that you'd like to say?
I mean, watch this space. I think is the main thing, right? Hold us accountable to what we're sort of saying. We're always going to revise and modify things, but the plan's a pretty coherent plan, and now our job is just to deliver on it. And quite honestly, celebrate some of the successes with us. I think there will be some good news stories coming out of this. And sometimes it's hiring people, and sometimes it's getting the right engineering group working for us. It's not always about great, but having said that, great is nice. So watch this space.
Colin, it's been great to catch up with you, and looks like a phenomenal project. Really exciting. I know that you have to be a bit cautious of what you say, but I think you delivered a very impactful sort of first look here. So certainly making me pretty excited to want to accumulate more of a position. So I really appreciate your time. Look forward to catching up with you maybe next quarter, and we'll see what you've been able to deliver.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, firstly, thank you for being a shareholder. Thank you for putting some of your trust in us. I look forward to hearing more about your acquisitions on the share side. But more importantly, this is a fun story. So I appreciate you spending time with us.
Thank you.